Bonjour. Hello in French. Welcome to Chapter 1. Chapter 1 is a very diverse chapter where it takes a little bit of information just in general about the biological sciences and covers a whole bunch of really different things. The rest of the chapters are all very specific. Like the next chapter focuses on chemistry, general chemistry. Chemistry of water, the chemistry of carbon, cells. But this chapter is sort of like a scatter shot, just a blast about a little bit about everything. So themes in the study of life, and there are themes that run through the entire biological sciences. An organism's adaptations to its environment are the result of evolution. So one of the things that I will do is sometimes I'm not going to just sit here and read the slides because I know you can read. But what I'll do is I'll read them and then explain them. So an adaptation is something that an organism, a trait of some kind that an organism has that allows it to interact with its environment. So for instance, the ghost plant, which is the flower, which we just had on that picture. Oh, I thought I had one, I guess I don't. Anyway, the ghost plant is adapted to surviving water. This helps it to survive in the crevices of rock walls. So the ghost plant, it lives in arid environments like along in the desert, along the sides of hills that don't get enough very much rain. So it's like a cactus adapted to a dry environment. So some of the things that you see, the different ecosystems, the ecosystems vary on their physical traits, like how much water is available. Lots of water in an ocean or a rainforest, not so much in the desert. Temperature, it can be hot. I was just in the Arizona desert. I can tell you it's hot. It can be cold. Hey, come around December or January, it'll actually get cold around here, believe it or not. And those are the two main factors, temperature and water availability, that determine what kind of ecosystem it is and what kind of organisms can live there. Now, of course, first topic slide here, we have one of the most controversial topics in all of biology, evolution, or evolution, as some people ask all the time. Do you believe in evolution? And, well, it's not something to believe in. It's a scientific theory. It's a scientific process. There's not really much to argue about whether it occurs or not. It most certainly does. Now, other things I believe in hope. I believe that in most people there is some good. I believe in God being a higher being than the plane of those of us living on Earth. I believe the sun is going to come up tomorrow morning. Those are beliefs. I believe that my wife is my best friend. So none of that is scientific, except maybe the sun coming up in the morning. So we need a definition of evolution that is scientific. And so here it says, Dr. B, this is my definition of evolution for you. Let's roll with this. And there shouldn't be much controversy about it. The change in the genetic makeup of a population over time. Okay, over time. So that means that evolution is a process, something that occurs. It takes a while. Some examples of evolution can happen really quickly, like a mutation, and others might take a long time. A population is a group of organisms all of the same species in a given area. So you might have a population of squirrels in my front yard, or I have a population of pecan trees in my front yard. You could talk about the population of people in the area where I live, or you could talk about the population of people in the area that you live. So you can expand the definition of population to fit what it is you're studying. The genetic makeup, that's just the DNA, the genes of the population. So it's not an individual. An individual can't change its genetic makeup. So individuals don't evolve in the biological sense. So the change in the genetic makeup of a population over time. So as time goes by, things happen. Some of those things change the genetic makeup of the population, and over time they accumulate. Now I have an aunt, bless her heart, I love her dearly. She's really awesome. But she is not that it's a bad thing, so I shouldn't say but she is a very devout Christian in a Protestant sense, and she doesn't believe that evolution happens at all. When I graduated with my PhD, and went to Rutgers University in New Jersey for my bachelor's degree. Actually, I started at a community college in New Jersey, CCM, County College of Morris, where I got an associate degree in business, and transferred to Rutgers, a four-year university in New Jersey. My mom lived there, and I could get in-state rates. In biological sciences there, went on and did my graduate work at UTA, which is actually a really fine school. You just don't think much of it because it's always been there for you, but it attracted me from all the way on the other side of the country, UT Arlington, for my master's and PhD. And then I got a job at Kansas State, and we were going to study the evolutionary history of a group of insects. We were going to collect them. We were going to go out in the eastern Appalachian Mountains, collect these insects. I was going to sequence their DNA, and this is in 1999, so DNA sequencing was a lot different back then. And we were going to study how these organisms had evolved over time and see if they needed to be different species. We had a suspicion that there was more than one species in this group. Well, I knew that I couldn't tell my Aunt Susan, I'm going to be studying the evolutionary history of these insects. Well, she would have said, and maybe called for some sort of exorcism. So I told her, she asked what we were going to do, and I told her we were going to go collect some of these insects and study how their DNA had changed over time. And she said, "Oh, great." And so she didn't even know I was talking about evolution. So really, if you put it in a biological sense and narrowly define it as such, the change in the genetic makeup of a population over time, it really isn't that controversial. People say, well, you can't observe it. Well, yeah, you can. And I'll give you examples of that. You can measure it in a lab. You can measure it in many ways. So at the end of this chapter, there's more on this topic, and I will elaborate. But for now, let's just take evolution and define it as the change in the genetic makeup of a population over time. Now, note to self. We're all just getting to know each other. I said that definition how many times? 4, 5, something like that. Do you suppose that there's a chance that that might be a quiz or a test question, or maybe both? Or that it might even show up on your comprehensive final in December? Wink, wink. Pretty good chance of that. So it's always a good idea when you are taking a class from somebody to try and get to know how they think, what their idiosyncrasies are. So a lot of times I'm just going to go ahead and tell you. I had a mentor along the way who told me what you want your students to know should not be a mystery to them. What you want your students to know should not be a mystery to them. And I thought, wow, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what my professors wanted me to know. So that changed my game. And so especially the most important aspects, I'll just come out and tell you. I want you to know this definition of evolution. How simple is that? So let's move on. Biology is the scientific study of life. Bios, to live. Ology, to study. A big topic because life defies a simple one-sentence definition. You can come up with a one-sentence definition, but there'll be exceptions. So it's the diversity of life on Earth is amazing. Pretty much everywhere we find water, we find some kind of form of life. Now, what are things that living things can do that define said life? Biotic is living, abiotic, non-living. I mentioned that in the virus presentation, that we take biotic, which means living, and we put the prefix a, which is the first one on your list of biological terms, and that means the opposite, means absent or without. So biotic means living, and abiotic means absent or without life. So what can a living organism do that a rock cannot? Well, one of them is make a copy of its genetic material and divide in two. And somebody might say, I've seen a rock split in two. Well, a rock does not have any genetic material, so that doesn't work. Let's take a look at some of the things that living organisms can do. That, looking for my highlighter here, laser pointer. Living organisms exhibit order at every level, whether you're looking at the molecular, the cellular, the organismal level, there's organization. Or since the hockey playoffs are going on right now and the Stars are really well, I'll do the Canadian pronunciation since they're up playing in Canada. They're playing in Edmonton. Organization. Organisms exhibit organization at every level. Now, this is going to require energy. We'll jump down here to the hummingbird. He's getting something to eat over here. That's some kind of sunflower in the order picture. And in order to maintain organization, it requires energy. Life requires energy. Maintaining organization requires energy. Let's talk about your kitchen. Is your kitchen organized? Is everything clean, put away, dishwasher empty, counters empty, cleaned off? I hope so. If you are, good for you. Mine is in a state of later on this afternoon, I'm going to be making a bunch of lasagnas. We're having lasagna for dinner tonight. Going to have a little one for me and the wife. And I'm going to make 2 trays of bigger ones that I put in the freezer. And I'm going to take those with me when I go visit someplace. Or if I get a sick friend, I pull one of them out, give it to them for their dinner. And that's going to take me some energy. And then in order to clean the kitchen back up, which I hope to have completely done before wifey gets from work, it's going to send that kitchen back into organized fashion. It's going to take me some energy. Where do I get that energy? Just like the hummingbird here, I get that energy from my food. So every organism needs a source of energy of some kind and the ability to process that energy. That's metabolic pathways. We need to, here's a little alligator crawling out of the egg. Grow and develop. So many, not all, but many now, or most. Remember, when I say most or many, that means but not all. Most organisms start out as an egg that is fertilized and turns into a single-celled zygote, which then makes a copy of its genetic material and divides. And then divides some more, and it becomes an embryo, and then a larval form or a fetus or something like that. And throughout the course of that organism's life, it grows, gets bigger, and develops, turns from a juvenile into an adult. And of course, in the process of that, this picture is a giraffe. I love giraffes. The species name of this giraffe is Giraffe reticulata. Giraffe reticulata. It's derived from the term reticulated, which means web-like branching pattern. And you can see it real nicely on the little baby giraffe here. The stripes form like a little web-like branching pattern. Giraffe reticulata. Remember that. I'm going to refer back to this giraffe. So mama giraffe gives rise to baby giraffe, which then grows and develops, becomes its own. If we look over here, we'll see the jackrabbit, whose ears are supposed to act as radiators to release body heat. The jackrabbit lives picture West Texas, where it gets hot and it gets cold too, I guess. So we regulate body temperature. Humans regulate body temperature by adjusting skin flow and blood flow to the skin, to sweating, to shivering, depending on the conditions. What we're trying to do by regulation is maintain some semblance of balance inside the body and inside the cells. This internal balance is called homeostasis. I call it the Goldilocks effect. It's, too hot is bad, too cold is bad, just right is good. And that's the way it is for most factors in living organisms. We need to be able to respond to the environment. Here is a Venus flytrap eating a damselfly. Damselflies are related to dragonflies. And so the Venus flytrap is when something lands, when an insect lands in the Venus flytrap, it closes up and eats it as its source of energy. And I really like this picture because I studied the larval form of damselflies for my master's degree. And I'll tell you about that some other day. And then evolutionary adaptation. In this instance, we see the seahorse in a coral, near a coral where it's living. It's got a little tail wrapped around the coral. And we see the seahorse has these little bumps that are the same color as the coral, so it kind of blends in. And when you think about evolution and you think about adaptations, a lot of times people want to think about being able to fight, being able to eat, being able to run. Sometimes the best bet is to be able to hide and blend in so the predator don't see you. So if there's a whole bunch of these seahorses, and they're all a little bit different because animals, plants, animals, fungi, organisms, they're all different from each other unless they're clones, just like we're all different from each other. If we were together, I'd say look around the room. So you could probably look around where you are and maybe find another person. You're different from that person. And seahorses are different from each other. They have variability. They vary. They're not the same. So some fish is walking around, swimming around, looking for something to eat. It might swim right by this seahorse because it sees another one who's maybe the colors don't blend in quite as well. Well, guess what happens then? The ones without the colors, the colors that don't blend in as well, they're the ones that get preyed upon the most. They get eaten. Whereas the ones that blend in real nicely, they survive. They're the ones that have the most offspring. The next generation looks more like the favorable adaptation here of blending into your environment. There's a damselfly. Damselfly is one of many insects. They lay their eggs in water, fresh water, ponds and streams, rivers. These eggs go through a developmental process and then hatch out into a larval stage, sometimes known as a nymph. I like to call them larvae. Nymph is an older term. And they spend a long time in the water. They go through various stages. They eat, they get bigger, they eat smaller little animals, and they get larger and larger. And then eventually they climb out of the water and metamorphose into an adult. And the adult is the reproductive phase. They don't live as long as the larval phase. They fly around and they mate and they lay their eggs, and that the mating process is really bizarre. Life is really bizarre. We see science fiction movies where they have weird things on there, weird organisms. The real living world is far stranger. Some of the strangest things you see in science fiction are based and enlarged on real life organisms. For instance, the damselfly here is only a couple inches long. The Venus flytrap only slightly bigger. But you would probably stay out of the woods if the Venus flytrap was camouflaged against its background and got to be about 10 feet tall, and you accidentally stepped in it, and next thing you know, you got eaten. You'd probably stay out of the woods, wouldn't you? Well, that could be something in a science fiction movie. Biology consists of more than just memorizing facts. Memorizing facts is an important part of it. This is one of the reasons why I gave you the biological terminology. Knowing words is going to give you power and strength. I've already gone through several of these words in the first couple presentations here. But it's also, so memorizing facts is an important part, but then also recognizing themes. These are patterns that emerge. Life can be studied at different levels, so it's hard to just say, okay, I'm going to study life. It's a little bit broad. We need to narrow it down. So we can study individual molecules, biological molecules. Some people might decide they want to study the biosphere, which is the living part of the planet. So we can break this down into these different levels of organization. So here's a chlorophyll molecule. Chlorophyll molecule is a molecule that captures the energy in sunlight and allows photosynthetic organisms to capture that energy in sunlight, combine that with carbon dioxide and water, and store that energy in the chemical bonds of sugar. So not all chlorophyll molecules are the same. Different organisms make different chlorophyll molecules, and really the genetics of the chlorophyll molecule, the DNA sequences, can be used to compare different plant groups and decide who's most closely related to who, like a family tree, based on the DNA of the chlorophyll molecule. Different chlorophyll molecules are sensitive to different frequencies of light. So that's something a molecular biologist might do. Might look at parts of a cell. This is a chloroplast. It gets its name. Plast is a storage area inside a cell, and chloro refers to chlorophyll. This is where you find the chlorophyll in a plant. And this is a transmission electron micrograph. You can tell because it's a two-dimensional picture of the inside. We'll talk more about the structure of the chloroplast a bit later. But that's the organ inside a cell, or organelle. Let's see the name down here. Organelle literally means little organ. So somebody thought that was cute. Oh, cells have little things inside them that do specific functions, just like we have a stomach and a liver. There's different things inside the cell that are like organs, so we'll call them organelles because they're little. And the chloroplast is one such organelle found only in photosynthetic organisms. And you might say, well, why don't you just say plants? Well, there are other groups of organisms besides plants that can conduct photosynthesis. And we'll look at those here in a bit too, later in this chapter, not right now. You can be a cellular biologist. Here's a plant cell, and these little green round things, these are chloroplasts. I hope in the kits that you got, maybe you have some sort of microscope, or maybe there's your lab instructor will have you look at some videos where you can see that the cell is actually a living dynamic. Dynamic means constantly changing. Where you look at these, you see these chloroplasts would be circulating all around the cell. You can study how one plant cell is different from another type of cell in the same plant or between different plants. Tissues. So this is a tissue of plants. So this would be, I'm not a plant person, so I don't know what this is. This looks like part of a leaf. Plants have tissues like xylem and phloem, which move water and nutrients. Animals, like people, have nervous tissue, muscle tissue, epithelial tissue like skin, connective tissue like blood, bone, cartilages. So maybe you study a particular tissue. Or you study an organ or an organ system. And this is common in medicine. You know, I know somebody who's unfortunately on their way to a nephrologist. A nephrologist is who studies kidney function. And so they spend their whole life studying, their whole professional life studying kidneys. You might go to a cardiologist who's going to specialize in the heart. You might go to a cardiovascular physician who's going to include the heart, the blood, and all the blood vessels. So an organ, we had a tissue. Let's go back to these definitions. A tissue is a collection of cells, similar structure, cooperating to perform a function. The instance of muscle tissue, it's a bunch of muscle cells who are cooperating to perform the function of movement. An organ is a collection of tissues cooperating to perform some function. So like the stomach has epithelial tissues lining the inside and outside, it's got connective tissues in the form of blood and some what do I want to call it, basement membrane. How do I want to describe that? Like just sort of background structure. It's got muscle tissue that grind our food up and mix it up with the digestive juices, and then it's got nervous tissue that tells it when to do all that stuff and when it's time to release some of that material from the stomach and send it into the small intestine. So that's the stomach is an example of an organ with all four tissue types. And then the digestive system. Digestive system is a collection of organs cooperating to perform some function. So digestive system includes teeth, tongue, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, rectum, anus, and the accessories of the pancreas and the salivary glands. Altogether, you get an organism. Here's a tree. I hope I didn't have to tell you that that was a tree. So somebody might be an organismal biologist and study how an organism, let's say, feeds or reproduces. Now here's that population. There's a bunch of trees. Population is a group of organisms, all of the same species in a given area. And I did that also. Part of one of the hats I wear is marine biologist, where I study a group of snails that are in a marine sanctuary offshore out in the Gulf of Mexico, not too far from where that hurricane is right now. Anyway, so perhaps I'll tell you about that little work along the way, because remember, I promised to tell you about the scientific method, and it's not always the same. So I've used the scientific method in my master's degree, where I studied the damselfly larvae, my PhD, where I studied snail shape and the effect of the environment, my postdoc, where I studied the evolutionary history of those insects, and marine biology, where I studied the population dynamics of this group of snails. And so those examples are far more interesting because they're real and I can talk about them. But we will talk about the basic scientific method at the end of this chapter. A community. A community is the biotic aspect of a particular area. So all the living things in a particular area. How many living things do you see in here? Well, there's plenty of plant life in this picture, isn't there? We see a little deer over here, and looks like there might be another deer over here. And a community ecologist would maybe study the predator-prey interactions, like what kind of plants do these deer eat? What kind don't they eat? What kind of animals in the forest eat the deer? Or are there no predators to eat this deer? If that's the case, then maybe we have to have a hunting season to keep the deer population from getting out of hand, getting too big, and eating up all their food and dying of starvation and spread disease. So that's one of the main things that community ecologists might do is study predator-prey interactions. You could look at an ecosystem. Now, when you get to the ecosystem, you're talking about biotic and abiotic factors. So the ecosystem, as I've already mentioned, determined mainly by the temperature and how much water is there, determines what kind of major plant life can live there, because the plants are the basis of every ecosystem, primary producers, as I'll explain. And so the ecosystems are studied by the interaction of the environment with the living organisms. And the biosphere is the entire living world, part of the world. Let's see, you are likely right about here, although maybe you'd rather be here in Hawaii. You wouldn't want to be here because that's where the hurricane is today. So that encompasses the whole planet, the whole living area of the planet. And then now, the more we look and the more we explore our planet, the more life we find. Everywhere we go, we find new forms of life. There's way down deep. They drill down deep into these muddy waters, way underwater, underground, and they find bacterial communities. A mile deep, we find pollen spores 10 miles up in the atmosphere. Everywhere we look on Earth, we find some kind of life. So a couple of things I want to mention about that. First of all, that's a nice picture. It's the only place we have that we can call home. We don't have any place else to live, so we darn sure ought to take care of it. And I'm a big advocate for taking care of our Earth. Well, I'm going to say some controversial things later on in this chapter that you've probably been taught by people who don't know as much about it as I do. I hate to say it that way, but you've been indoctrinated with a lot of information that may or may not be true or exaggerated at best. So the Earth has been around for a really long time. 4.5 billion years is the current age for the Earth, scientifically accepted age for the Earth. And we should take care of it. It's home. So with that, as the first installment of chapter 1, I say to you now, Wa.